It was a cold afternoon in late 2008 when Michael Jackson arrived quietly at a small rehabilitation hospital on the outskirts of Los Angeles. There were no cameras, no reporters, no bodyguards announcing his presence. Just a man in a black fedora, dark glasses, and a long coat, walking slowly through the hospital doors with single purpose: to meet a boy whose life was coming to an end. Inside room 317 lay 10-year-old Daniel Carter, paralyzed from the neck down after a tragic accident. Daniel had spent the last year of his life unable to move, unable to speak clearly, and unable to leave his bed. The doctors had done everything they could. Now, there was nothing left to do except keep him comfortable. Daniel had one final wish. He wanted to meet Michael Jackson. What happened in that hospital room would move nurses to tears, silence doctors in the hallway, and stay with everyone who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. And what Michael did for that boy would never appear in the newspapers. Stay with this story until the end, because what happened between Michael and that child in those final hours will change the way you see him forever. Room 317 was the quietest room on the entire third floor of the rehabilitation hospital. The nurses said it was because the machines had stopped making noise. The monitors were still on, but the beeping had slowed, the alarm silenced, the movements minimal. Life inside that room had become soft, fragile, and slow, as if the world itself was tiptoeing around the bed where Daniel Carter lay. Daniel was 10 years old. Once, he had been a fast runner. His mother remembered how he used to race his friends down their street every afternoon, his sneakers flashing like lightning, his laughter echoing long after he had disappeared around the corner. He loved bicycles, comic books, and, more than anything, music, especially Michael Jackson. Every night, before the accident, Daniel fell asleep listening to Heal the World. Sometimes, man in the mirror. Sometimes you are not alone. His mother said that when the music played, Daniel would stop talking and just listen, as if every word mattered. Then, one rainy evening, everything changed. A car lost control at an intersection. Daniel was crossing the street. The impact threw him several feet. The spinal injury was immediate and irreversible. When he woke in a hospital 3 days later, he could not move his arms. He could not move his legs. His voice came out in a whisper. The doctors used words that no parent ever wants to hear: permanent paralysis, no recovery. Over the next year, Daniel learned how to survive without moving. His eyes became his language. His breathing became his effort. His smile became rare. But his love for Michael Jackson never faded. In fact, it grew stronger. Nurses often found him staring at a small poster of Michael taped to the wall across from his bed. His mother had placed it there, so Daniel would have something beautiful to look at when he woke. On difficult days, she played Michael's songs on her phone and placed it near his pillow. When Heal the World came on, Daniel's breathing would slow. His eyes would soften. And sometimes, just sometimes, the corner of his mouth would lift into a faint smile. By the winter of 2008, Daniel's condition worsened. His lungs were failing. Infections kept returning. His heart struggled. The doctors finally told his mother the truth. Daniel did not have much time left. That night, as she sat beside his bed holding his motionless hand, she whispered, "Is there anything you want, sweetheart?" Anything at all. It took Daniel several minutes to gather enough breath to answer. His voice barely made a sound. "Michael Jackson." His mother's throat tightened. "You want to hear his music?" Daniel shook his head very slightly. "Meet him?" She froze. She knew how impossible it sounded, how unrealistic, how unfair to even hope. But she also knew something else. When a child is dying, hope is not about logic. It is about love. She contacted a small charity that specialized in final wishes for terminally ill children. The charity made the call. They explained Daniel's situation. They explained the accident, the paralysis, the limited time. They did not expect a response. 2 days later, the hospital received a phone call. Michael Jackson would come, not with cameras, not with press, not with publicity. Just him. On the morning of the visit, the nurses prepared the room quietly. They brushed Daniel's hair. They adjusted his blankets. They dimmed the lights. His mother sat at his side, her heart pounding, afraid he would not stay conscious long enough to see him. At 3:17 p.m., the door opened. A tall man stepped inside, wearing a black fedora, a soft white shirt, and dark sunglasses. He moved slowly, gently, as if afraid to disturb the air in the room. "Hello," Michael said softly. Daniel's eyes shifted toward the sound. They widened. Michael removed his glasses. He smiled. The room changed. Daniel's breathing became faster. His eyes filled with tears. His lips trembled as he tried to speak. Michael walked to the bed and sat beside him. He did not rush. He did not say anything dramatic. He simply took Daniel's hand between his own. "I'm here," Michael whispered. "I heard you wanted to see me." Daniel tried to smile. His face struggled. His eyes would not leave Michael's. His mother began to cry silently. For several minutes, no one spoke. The boy who could not move and the man the world adored sat together in complete silence, connected by nothing but presence, understanding, and something deeper than words. Michael leaned closer. "What's your favorite song?" he asked. Daniel whispered, "Heal the World." Michael closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were shining. "That's my favorite, too." He began to sing. Not loudly, not for performance, just for Daniel. His voice filled the small room, soft, fragile, full of emotion. The nurses stopped in the hallway. Doctors stood frozen. Even the machines seemed to fade into the background. And for the first time in months, Daniel smiled. A real smile. The kind that lifts the whole face. The kind that says everything the body cannot. Michael noticed. He stopped singing. He leaned close and whispered something into Daniel's ear. And whatever he said would become the most important moment of Daniel's life. Michael had stopped singing, but the echo of his voice still seemed to float in the room. Daniel's smile had not faded. His chest rose and fell more quickly now. His eyes locked on Michael's face, as if afraid the moment might disappear if he blinked. Michael leaned closer, so close that only Daniel could hear him. His voice was almost a breath. "You know something, Daniel? People think I sing for the world, but today I'm singing for you." Daniel's lips trembled. Tears slid down the sides of his face. His chest tightened, and a faint sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sob. Michael gently brushed the tears from the boy's cheek with his thumb. "You're very brave," Michael whispered. "Braver than I've ever been." Daniel's eyes searched Michael's face, trying to understand. He struggled to form the words, but his body would not cooperate. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. His throat worked hard. Michael waited. I'm scared," Daniel finally whispered. Michael's heart broke. "I know," he said softly. "It's okay to be scared. But you're not alone. Not today. Not now." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. Carefully, he opened it and placed it on the blanket beside Daniel. It was a handwritten lyric. A single line. "You are not alone. I am here with you." Michael looked at Daniel again. "That's true, you know," he said. "It's not just a song. It's a promise." Daniel stared at the words. His breathing slowed. His hands could not move, but his eyes followed every letter as if trying to memorize it. Michael began to speak again, quietly, gently, as if telling a secret the world was not allowed to hear. "Sometimes when your body is hurting and your heart is tired and everything feels heavy, the world can feel very small and lonely, but inside you there's still a light, a big light, bigger than pain, bigger than fear." Daniel's tears fell faster now. "You don't have to be afraid of what's coming," Michael continued, "because wherever you go next, love goes with you. Every hug you've ever felt, every song you've ever loved, every person who ever cared about you, none of that disappears." Daniel closed his eyes. His breathing became unsteady. Michael placed his hand over Daniel's heart. "I feel it," he whispered. "You have a beautiful heart, and it's going to be okay." The room was completely silent. Daniel opened his eyes again. "Will you stay?" he whispered. Michael did not hesitate. "As long as you need me." Minutes passed, then more. Michael talked to him about music, about animals, About how he used to climb trees as a boy. About the moonwalk. About dreams. About how sometimes the best people are the ones who suffer the most. Daniel listened to everything. He did not speak much, but he did not stop smiling. At one point, Daniel's mother gently touched Michael's shoulder. Her eyes were full of tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means to him." Michael shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "You don't know what it means to me." Daniel suddenly inhaled sharply. His chest shuddered. His eyes widened. Michael leaned in. Hey, it's okay. I'm right here." Daniel's lips moved. "Sing again." Michael nodded. He sang "You Are Not Alone." But this time, he sang it differently. Softer, slower. Every word full of something that could not be explained. Daniel's breathing slowed. His eyelids grew heavy. His smile stayed. The nurses watched the monitor carefully. The lines on the screen moved, then moved more slowly, then slower. Michael kept singing. Daniel's mother held her son's face in her hands, crying openly now. Daniel's eyes closed. His smile remained. And then the monitor made one long, quiet sound. No alarm. No chaos. Just silence. Michael stopped singing. He did not move. He kept holding Daniel's hand. Minutes passed. No one spoke. Finally, a nurse placed her hand over Daniel's chest and slowly nodded. Daniel was gone. Michael bowed his head. Tears fell onto the blanket. He leaned forward and kissed Daniel's forehead. "Thank you for letting me be with you," he whispered. Daniel's mother collapsed into sobs. Michael wrapped his arms around her and held her as she cried, not as a superstar, not as a legend, but simply as another human being sharing unbearable loss. When Michael finally stood, he gently placed a folded lyric in Daniel's hand. Then he looked at the nurses. "Please," he said softly, "tell him the world loves him." The hallway outside room 317 was quiet, but it no longer felt like a hospital. It felt like a sacred place. Nurses stood in silence. A doctor removed his glasses and wiped his eyes. Daniel's mother remained seated on the edge of the bed, still holding her son's hand, as if her touch could keep the moment from ending. Michael stood near the window, looking at the city lights flickering far below. His shoulders were tense, his face pale. For several minutes, he said nothing. Then he reached into his coat pocket again. This time, he removed a small envelope. He walked back to the bed and placed it gently beside Daniel's hand. "What's that?" Daniel's mother asked through tears. Michael swallowed. "A letter. For him." She nodded slowly, unable to speak. After a few moments, she opened it and began to read. "My dear Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I had to leave before you. I didn't want to go without telling you how much you changed me. You see, the world thinks I give people hope, but today you gave it to me. Your courage showed me something very important, that the strongest hearts often live inside the quietest bodies. You are not weak. You are powerful in ways the world does not understand. I promise you this. I will carry your smile with me for the rest of my life. And when I sing, somewhere inside every song, there will be a piece of you. You are not alone. You were loved, and you mattered more than you will ever know. With all my heart." Michael, Daniel's mother, lowered the letter, her hands shaking. She looked up at Michael, her eyes full of something between grief and gratitude. "He waited for you," she whispered. "All day. He wouldn't sleep. He said, Michael promised he would come." Michael closed his eyes. "I'm glad I kept that promise." A nurse approached quietly. "Mr. Jackson, we should prepare him now." Daniel's mother kissed her son's forehead one last time. "Good night, my baby." Michael leaned in and whispered, "Rest, my friend." As the staff began their work, Michael stepped into the hallway. He did not run. He did not speak. He simply stood there, still. One of the nurses finally broke the silence. "Mr. Jackson, we've seen many families pass through these doors, but we've never seen anything like what you did in that room." Michael looked at her. "I didn't do anything special," he said. She shook her head. "You gave a dying child the most beautiful moment of his life." Michael's eyes filled again. He walked out of the hospital just as the sun began to rise. Outside, the world moved on. Cars passed. People hurried to work. A new day had begun. But inside Michael, something had changed. He drove for a long time without music. When he finally returned home, he went straight to the piano. He began to write. The melody came slowly, the lyrics even slower. But by the time the morning light filled the room, a new song had been born. A song about courage. A song about love. A song about a boy named Daniel. Michael never released that song. He kept it for himself, for the rest of his life. For the next 3 days, Michael Jackson barely slept. He stayed inside his private studio, the curtains drawn, the world outside completely forgotten. The melody that had begun in the hospital parking lot refused to leave him. It followed him into every moment. The soft beeping of medical machines, the fragile smile on Daniel's face, the warmth of a small hand squeezing his own. The piano became his anchor. He would sit for hours, playing the same few chords over and over, stopping only to write, cross out, rewrite. The song did not want to be rushed. It demanded honesty. It demanded pain. It demanded truth. At one point, his longtime producer Brad entered the room quietly and watched from the doorway. "Michael," he said gently, "you've been in here for almost 48 hours. Michael didn't look up. "I'm almost done," he whispered. Brad stepped closer and listened as Michael played the song from the beginning. It was not loud. It was not grand. There were no heavy drums, no dramatic crescendos, no showmanship. Just piano, just voice, just grief. When the last note faded, the room remained silent. Brad swallowed. That's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard," he said. Michael shook his head. "It's not for the world." "Why not?" Michael's voice broke. "Because that moment doesn't belong to them." Brad understood. Michael recorded the song that night. Just one take. No edits. No corrections. He titled the file, "For Daniel." He locked it away. Weeks later, Michael returned to the hospital. He brought no cameras, no staff, no press. He went straight to Daniel's mother. She was sitting alone in the waiting room when she saw him. She froze. Then she stood. Then she ran. They embraced without words. "I needed to come back," Michael said. "I needed to know how you were." She smiled sadly. "Some days are hard. Some days are harder. But," he was happy, "because of you." Michael reached into his jacket and handed her a small box. Inside was a delicate silver music note pendant. "For you," he said, "so you never forget the song he gave us." Her hands trembled as she accepted it. "You already gave us everything." "No," Michael whispered. "He gave me something too." Years passed. Michael never spoke publicly about Daniel. No interviews. No documentaries. No books. But something in him was different after that night. He visited more hospitals. He stayed longer. He listened more. And whenever someone asked him why he kept doing it, he would simply say, "Because sometimes a smile can change a life." One evening, long after Daniel was gone, Michael sat with his children at home. Prince was drawing. Paris was reading. Blanket was building a tower of blocks on the floor. Michael watched them quietly. Then Prince looked up. "Daddy, are you sad today?" Michael thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "No," he said. "Today I'm grateful." "For what?" "For the people who remind me why my heart is here." Paris closed her book. "Like us?" "Yes," Michael said softly. "And like a boy named Daniel." On the 10th anniversary of Daniel's passing, his mother received a package with no return address. Inside was a recording. The song, "For Daniel." She listened to it with tears streaming down her face. At the end of the recording, Michael's voice spoke quietly. "Thank you for trusting me with your son's last smile." She played that song every year on his birthday. Michael carried Daniel's memory with him for the rest of his life. Not as sadness, but as light. As proof that sometimes the greatest legacy isn't found on a stage, but in a hospital room at midnight, when a dying child finally feels joy at V. The rain was gentle the morning Daniel's letter arrived. Michael sat alone at the long wooden table in his library, the envelope resting untouched in front of him. The handwriting on the front was shaky but determined. Michael Jackson. No return address. Only a small heart drawn in blue ink beside the name. He opened it carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a photograph. The photo showed Daniel in his hospital bed, smiling wide, his eyes bright. Michael held it for a long moment before unfolding the letter. Dear Michael, the nurse is writing this for me because my hands don't work very good anymore. But these are my words. Thank you for coming to see me. Thank you for holding my hand. Thank you for singing with me. When you were there, I wasn't scared anymore. I know I'm going to heaven soon. The doctor said I probably won't come home again. But I'm okay because I got to meet you first. Mom says you're famous all over the world. But when you were with me, you were just Michael. I like that Michael. If you ever feel sad, you can think of me smiling. I will be smiling forever. Love, Daniel. Michael's hands trembled. He pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. For a long time, he did not move. Later that afternoon, his assistant came quietly into the room. Michael, are you okay? Michael nodded slowly. I will be. He placed the letter inside a small leather journal and locked it in the bottom drawer of his desk. That letter became something he returned to on difficult days. Before concerts, before rehearsals, before interviews that left him exhausted. Whenever the world felt too loud, he read Daniel's words and remembered the sound of a child laughing in a hospital room. Months later, Michael visited another children's hospital. This time he brought his children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket walked beside him down the long hallway, their eyes wide as they passed the rooms filled with quiet machines and soft voices. Michael knelt in front of them. Some of the kids in here are very sick, he explained gently. Some are scared. What we're going to do today is make them feel less alone. Prince nodded seriously. Paris reached for Michael's hand. Blanket hugged his leg. They spent hours moving from room to room, talking, drawing, laughing, listening. One small boy whispered to Michael, Are you the man from the music? Michael smiled. Today I'm just a friend. When they finally left, Paris tugged on Michael's jacket. Daddy, can we come back again? Michael's eyes filled. Yes, he said. We will. And they did, many times. Late one night, Michael sat at his piano. He placed Daniel's photo on the stand and began to play. The melody flowed easily now, no longer heavy with grief. Soft, gentle, warm. Prince stood quietly in the doorway listening. Daddy, that song makes me feel peaceful. Michael smiled. That's what it's for. Can I learn it? Of course. And so Michael taught his son the song that the world would never hear. Years later, after Michael was gone, Daniel's mother was cleaning out her attic. She found an old box labeled Hospital. Inside were letters, drawings, photographs, and one CD with a handwritten label for Daniel Michael. She sat on the floor and played it again, and again, and again. In that small living room, Daniel's laughter seemed to echo. Some stories never appear in newspapers. Some miracles happen quietly, and some smiles live forever. Years later, people would still talk about Michael Jackson as if they understood him. They would list the records, the tours, the awards, the controversies, the costumes, the headlines. They would argue about the man he was in public and the mystery he was in private. But very few would ever know about Daniel. And that was exactly how Michael wanted it. On the afternoon of June 24th, 2009, Michael sat quietly in his bedroom at Holmby Hills. The house was still. Rehearsals were scheduled for the next day, but for once he felt no urgency, no pressure, no noise in his mind, only peace. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk and took out the leather journal. Inside were photographs, notes, letters, and memories that mattered more to him than any gold record on the walls. He found Daniel's letter. The paper was worn from being folded and unfolded too many times. He read it slowly, the words as powerful now as the first time. When you were there, I wasn't scared anymore. Michael placed a photo beside the letter and whispered, Neither was I, Daniel. He leaned back against the headboard and close his eyes. For a moment, he could hear the hospital room again, the soft of machines, the squeak of shoes in the hallway, the quiet courage in a child's voice. He could hear Daniel laughing. He smiled. That evening, Prince came into the room. "Daddy." Michael looked up. "Come here." Prince sat beside him. "Are you tired?" "A little," Michael said, "but it's a good tired." Prince glanced at the photograph. "That's the boy from the hospital, right?" "Yes." "He looks happy." "He was very brave." Prince thought for a moment. "Daddy, do you think he remembers you?" Michael's eyes softened. "I think he remembers how he felt," he said, "and that's more important." Prince nodded. Then he said something that Michael would carry with him forever. "I want to make people feel like that, too." Michael pulled him into a hug. "You already do." The next morning, Michael left the house for rehearsal. He never returned. When the news broke, the world shattered in a way no one had expected. But in a quiet neighborhood across the country, Daniel's mother sat on her couch, holding her son's photograph and the CD Michael had sent. She whispered, "He came to you again, didn't he?" She pressed play. The melody filled the room. She closed her eyes and saw Daniel smiling. At the memorial service weeks later, the world saw Michael Jackson the legend, but his children saw something else. Prince held Daniel's photograph in his jacket pocket. Paris carried the small leather journal Michael had shown her once. Blanket clutched the tiny blue heart drawing Daniel had made for Michael. None of them spoke about it. They didn't have to. Years passed. Prince grew older. So did Paris. So did Blanket. They would sometimes talk about that hospital, about the little boy who taught their father something the world never could. Prince said it best one night as they sat together. Dad wasn't famous to that boy. Paris nodded. He was just kind. Blanket whispered. And that's what made him special. In a quiet cemetery far from the cameras, Daniel's mother placed a new stone. Beneath Daniel's name, she carved a sentence. He was not afraid anymore. And beneath that, a small heart. Somewhere, in ways the world cannot measure, Daniel's smile still lives. In music, in memory, in the quiet moments when someone chooses kindness. And in the legacy of a man who once sat beside a hospital bed, held a child's hand, and made fear disappear. That was Michael Jackson. Not the star, not the icon, not the legend, but the man who understood that the greatest performance is making someone feel less alone.